Welcome.
Welcome
Welcome.
to SNR
to SNR38
Interlinked.
This is
String Theory.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the official podcast of SNR38 String Theory. Today's episode topic is diversity, and here joining us on this enlightening conversation is Roseann Lynch. She is the Chief People Officer of Ralph Lauren and is the head of the Ralph Lauren Corporate Foundation. Roseann is responsible for talent management, employee benefits, and organizational development. Having been with Ralph Lauren since 2004, she brings a wealth of experience and insight to the table. Roseann is here today to talk about her career journey, the challenges she has faced, and beyond. So Roseann, thank you so much for being with us today. Before we get started, could you give us a little bit of background on your kind of the journey you took to be with us today?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, my background's pretty extensive, so I won't give the full picture. But been in the fashion industry for the last 32 years. Worked my way through organizations like the Gap and Giorgio Armani, and started in retail operations, and then worked my way through human resources. Kind of, I would say, a quarter of my way through my career, someone pulled me out, threw me in human resources, and said, "We think this would be the absolute right thing for you to be doing." I tend to have a people orientation in my life, so I've been in the industry a long time, and I've had the ability to work with some incredible people along the way that have been great mentors and supporters, so I've learned a lot. And in that process, I joined the Marist Fashion Advisory Board, I think it was 9 years ago, but I don't remember for sure. And then when JR moved on, I became chair of the Fashion Advisory Board a few years ago. And it's been wonderful because we've had an opportunity. I think the benefit of my role in a fashion organization and in support of an institution like Marist allows us to shape curriculum and talk about what's really going on in the world of fashion and in the work we do, and are we preparing our future leaders in fashion for the things that they need to know to be successful when they leave the grounds of Marist and they move on. And many of our, I would say, what's interesting about our group is, while they're competitors of yours, Parsons, FIT, RISD, others, we have a lot of our executive team members supporting many of the fashion institutions in one way or another. And I think what that does do is it does allow us to, again, shape the learning platforms that you are all experiencing in those institutions to be able to set the groups up to succeed. So I think, so it's been a pretty incredible, I'm a mom of 4 children. They range from 17 to 28. 2 are either at Marist now or are graduated from Marist. So we have a really strong connection to the school, and have a great husband who's been a great supporter of me throughout my journey, which has allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do if it weren't for him.
And I've gone through a lot of interviews for internships and stuff like that, and anytime I mentioned that I went to Marist and they have some sort of connection with Marist, they're like, "Oh, we love their curriculum, and they're like, they're always coming to us, exactly,
ready.
How they need ready." That's exactly it. They're ready for it.
Well, what makes Marist unique, and this is one of the reasons I love the school and I really support the advisory board to the extent that I do, is I think a liberal arts degree is kind of important.
It's very important.
I mean, at the end of the day, specializations are great, but you really want to be prepared for all of the other topics that come up on any given day. And especially in today's world, if you think about post-pandemic, there's the lines of like what I do and who I am get very blurred. It's no longer like, this is what goes on at work, this is what goes on at home, this is what goes on in my social life. It's all one. And so you have to be prepared to have conversations about just about anything. And all of those things that we never talked about at work actually are the things you always talk about at work now. And I know we'll talk about diversity in a minute, but diversity, equity, inclusion, that's really all about all the things we were told forever. Now, these are topics that never come up at work. Now, they're 50% of the conversations at work.
They're very big conversations,
and when you're an aspiring designer, or you're thinking about, you're a merchant and you're buying for a brand, or you're marketing for a brand, you have to be thinking about what's going on in the world and send those messages to the consumer that you are aware and you understand and you're leaning in with some level of empathy. And so I think a liberal arts degree, and that's what's so unique about Marist, is it just sets you up as a student entering the workforce with a much broader view of the world.
Absolutely.
And just better prepared.
Yeah. And I think, I can take Bio 101 and I might not ever use that, but it's the lessons you learn in those types of classes.
Exactly.
And writing for College 101, I might not have to write a 6-page essay on To Kill a Mockingbird anytime soon, but
you'll have to write something.
Exactly. And you want to get your point across.
Right, yes.
You don't want to beat around the bush.
Exactly.
You want to be able to have these lessons and be ready for when you come into a company like Ralph Lauren to say, hey, can you give me a summary of anything?
Exactly.
Great. It'll be on your desk by the end of the day.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Today's topic we're focusing on is diversity. So
Great.
before we get into Ralph Lauren, what does diversity mean to you, whether that be as a woman, as a mother, just as a human in today's world?
Diversity is kind of everything to me, but a lot of people who know me know, so I'm going to bore people with my story quickly. But because it's a first-hand experience. So
Yeah.
I'm a first-generation American, so my parents came here from Italy, and that alone, growing up in Brooklyn, New York, as a child of immigrants, you just experience the world very different than someone who has been here for generations and generations. It's just, I grew up in an area that at the time, I'm 53 now, so this is going back a ways. Neighborhoods were very exclusive. Italians lived here, Spanish lived here, the Jewish community lived here, the Black community lived here, and for the most part, we all stayed in our lanes and we did our thing, and never, unless you're on the subway, shall the two ever really meet, right? And then little by little, you started to see people cross lines, and that became very complicated. So if you read anything about what went on in the 70s and 80s in Brooklyn, New York, or probably anywhere in the world, but for me specifically, most of the tensions came from groups that were not accustomed to being together, starting to come together. And there was a lot of stuff that came with that. So as a young person growing up, I was faced with diversity issues all the time, inclusivity issues all the time. Then you add just what goes on in your own family. And while my parents both worked, there was role definition. Moms do this, dads do this, women do this, men do this. Now, I still think men should take out the garbage. Just kidding. But I grew up with a very traditional philosophy around gender roles and gender and types, and at the same time, though, was raised to be independent. And my dad was very much, like I said, my mom worked. She had her own income. It was kind of this strange thing. While she worked, but she still had her primary role.
Yeah.
He obviously worked. He had his primary role. I think that actually flowed through my life too. I'm a professional, but I do take the role of being a mom and a woman in our household as a pretty traditional way. Like there's expectations of me as a mom and a wife that I honor. I don't necessarily think everybody needs to honor that, but I do. And so, but you're constantly struggling with that or battling that or trying to make sense out of all of that. So for me, even just foundationally, gender, ethnicity, race has been a part of my life for a very long time, and just grappling with what it all means. Am I lucky as a woman to have achieved a certain level of accomplishment? I think there are generations of people that would say, yeah, very. But I would say, no, I worked for where I am, and I should be treated equally
because
to
I
anyone,
work just as hard.
To anyone else who is in the role that I'm in.
Absolutely.
And so fighting for parity and equity is very important to me. And people given the opportunity to succeed regardless of race, gender, or any other, differentiating factor is critical.
Absolutely. And how does that translate into the work you do at Ralph Lauren? Because I know it's always amazing, especially as people going into the industry like myself and like the people who watch this podcast, to see companies working to that.
Yeah.
Because it's so important to us as, Gen Z or really just professionals going in.
Yeah.
To see companies making that effort.
Totally. Well, there are a couple things. One is never work anywhere where your values aren't shared.
Agreed.
So the great news is, if you listen to Ralph's story, I mean, diversity's meant everything to him since he was a child. And growing up in the Bronx, the way he experienced life as a Jewish American, and how he engaged culture and community in his craft and in his work. And his values are deeply rooted in embracing diversity and differences. I think that's what made him so successful. And in the American dream, which is we should all have, we're here with the right to achieve anything, and as he would say, be anything you want to be and be many things. That's his way of saying everyone has the right to join. Everyone has the right to participate. And so the first thing is, be somewhere where they share your values. So for me, it was easy to be here and start to create a platform for DE&I because he started it.
Yeah.
We started diversity, equity, inclusion conversations in the year 2000. So way before I think most companies started to really embrace it and create strategies around it.
Or even implement it,
Right. We had dialogue. I think the beautiful thing about the fashion industry, so that you kind of layer that in, that's all about being inspired by different cultures and different communities and different conversations and colors and languages. And I think just lucky enough to be one with a company where the founder shares my values makes it easy. Two, being in an industry where diversity is actually what makes the industry work is incredible. And so that already gave us kind of a step up, a leg up, so that when we started to create a real strategy around diversity, equity, inclusion, which is really more about, it's one thing to say we believe in it, and then we have to understand what does it look like practiced. Do we have representation? Do our management teams, our executive teams, our board, does our company represent the consumer that we serve? And is it a good representation? Are all people, do we have systems in place that allow all people to achieve their goals consistently? And they're all given the opportunity to succeed, without discrimination. I think for us, the last 10 years has been more about putting in the right resources, tools, to be able to hold ourselves to a standard where we can actually show that we're a company that supports diversity, equity, inclusion, not just talk about it. Before you even begin conversations on diversity or try to engage within a corporation or a community, you really have to get to know your own stuff. So people should take a really good look at themselves and an honest look. Again, why do I behave the way I do? How do I think? Why do I think the way I do? I mean, there is a lot of material out there to really uncover your own biases, your own stuff. I don't think you can safely approach diversity without being super honest with who you are, where you are. We're all on the spectrum, right? It's like where we are. And so nobody's perfect. Nobody's 100% evolved. Everyone has a point of view about something because something has impacted them somewhere. And, maybe it's as simple as I'm so evolved, but I still don't like frogs. Okay. But there's still something, right? And so, where did that come from and how does that, but none of us are really there. All of us are somewhere in the middle. And I think before you can safely approach diversity, equity, inclusion, conversations around belonging and psychological safety, you really have to take a good look at who you are and do the work. Really do the work. And then just say, so how has this shown up in my life? Because the one thing that you always want to get straight is you don't want to be performative. So nothing I say, and unfortunately, I would expect people to hold us to a standard that says, I'm not going to say something that I don't actually do. And I say it to my kids all the time. I'm like, I would never, even as a manager or leader of people, ask someone to do something that I wouldn't do. And that's old school stuff, right? It's like, don't ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't do. I need to be prepared to do everything I ask my team to do. Or I would have once done it. And it's the same thing with DE&I and belonging. And in my life, I'm not conducting myself with the curiosity, with the vulnerability, with the appreciation that's expected in those areas, then I can't talk about it. And I definitely can't toot our horn about how great we are if I'm not practicing it in my own life.
Yeah.
And so I do think people need to be really honest with themselves before they start engaging this work. They can look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not doing the best,
Yeah.
but I'm doing the best I can. So that's one piece of advice. Second is surround yourself with people who challenge you and make you better. So don't ever be the smartest person in the room. You should have people who are like, yeah, but what about? And who are really pushing you to think. You need to read. You need to read a lot. And you need to engage in the world and what's going on in the world. Hiding behind some idea of what DE&I is not helpful. This is not a textbook assignment. You need to get out there and understand how people are experiencing the world. Wherever you are, if it's school and you're working on this initiative, if you're working on it in a corporation, listen to the people. The most important people to tell you if your efforts are working is, what is your experience? Do you feel a sense of belonging? Do you feel included? Do you feel like you have an equal opportunity to achieve? If the very last person in that organization can't say, I feel good about the work we're doing, then we need to do better work. So I think you have to have an opportunity to hear all voices and have all voices heard. And in fairness, you do need to create a system where people can speak openly without fear of retaliation or discrimination. And so you do have to create an environment where that can live safely. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way.
It's hard work, but for the best initiative.
I mean, it's great. And if everybody does it with the right intentions, which is not fame and, I'd love to get written up in the New York Times as the best company to work for diversity. And I love when we're on all this, best company for women, best company. I love that. But we're not working to get on that list.
No. Yeah.
Right? We're doing the work because we actually believe we'd like women to be an important part of our future. And I want them to feel like they can be everything, or an LGBTQAI plus person should have every bit of the same experience, right? And same for anybody.
Yeah.
So do it for all the right reasons. Start with be a good human.
Right, and then we'll work up.
And then we'll work from there.
We'll get there, but let's start on a foundation.
Exactly.
Let's be a nice, empathetic person.
That would be good.
Right?
If everyone did that, yeah.
The silence answered that one.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Roseann, so much for sitting with me and talking about your career, your journey, yourself, Ralph Lauren, diversity, everything like that.
Thank you.
Of course, for each episode of The String Theory, I am inviting one of my co-directors to be with me on the show. So today I am joined by one of my production directors, Laura. Thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Thank you.
Of course. So Laura is here to tell us a little bit about her responsibilities for SNR, her road to directorship, and how we all kind of interlink with each other. Yes. So if you could start off, tell me about how you got into the class and how you became director.
Yeah, so I applied my junior year because I actually transferred to Marist, so I was a little new to the fashion program.
We got her.
So
we got her, ladies and gentlemen.
I applied and got in my junior year, and I was put on the communications team, and I was one of the communications assistants, and then I kind of got involved in the class. I was super involved in the podcast, actually. And then I kind of got involved in production toward the day of show. I got involved on the model side, and I applied for directorship, and I was given production director in charge of the model team.
A little insider, Laura was actually our saving grace because no one could go get the models, but you live near the city.
Yeah. So,
respectively.
Yeah.
And she went to go get the models for us, so she was our saving grace for the day of show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Laura single-handedly got us all of our models. So you and your co-director, Lily, actually did a switch directorship. So you were on the comm team, and now you're on the production team. Lily, same thing, branding to production. Tell me about how you kind of took that change in stride.
I mean, it was definitely a learning curve, and talking to the previous production directors, they were really great about teaching us like how to do everything and all the ins and outs of production. And also JM was a really good help in just guiding us in the right direction. But it was kind of just like a live and learn situation. It was like, if you make a mistake, you just have to move on. But my team has been so willing to learn, and they're also all pretty much all new to production. So it's one step at a time for the entire production team. Yeah. So
if it makes you feel any
really
better,
good.
I've been in comm all 3 years, and I still think I'm the exact same thing. I'm like, well, that wasn't right, but we'll keep going.
We move on. So it's been really good.
Yeah. What do you do as the production director?
So as the production model director, I'm essentially in charge of the hair and makeup, the models, both professional and student models, and just making sure they're organized within the garments and they're being communicated with and ready to go for the day of show.
This episode is the diversity episode. What does diversity mean to you, whether that mean personally or within SNR?
I mean, diversity in general, I just love having people of all backgrounds and all representations, whether that be someone with a disability, different racial backgrounds, coming from different social backgrounds. I really just like them to be included in everything. And in SNR, I think that's really something we're trying to do this year, and also we tried to do it again last year, and we're kind of bringing those parts into this year of having disabled models and showing their representation, and people of all races, people of all body shapes, all heights, stuff like that. I think it's really important to show that aspect of diversity because like a lot of the fashion industry shows that everyone's cut and dry same look, but it's not really like that in the real world. So for us to really show that and like display that, I think that's really important.
Agreed. And I think as someone who doesn't work with models really ever, it's so impressive to see models that look like me and look like everyone else in the room, in the audience. We love to see fit models come down because it's so, cut and dry and perfect and whatever, but it's just so refreshing to see someone who looks like everyone else walking down the runway.
Yeah, that's like something I really liked being in this role is like we work with professional agencies a lot. So there's something now, there's a lot of inclusive agencies. So we have a transgender agency, we have a disabled agency, we have a plus size agency. So there's a lot more representation in the industry than I thought there was like before I was in this role.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to see that and see that people are so passionate and open to having these kind of models in their work.
Yeah, absolutely. SNR has really tried to include diversity in the models, whether that be within the Marist community or in the modeling industry. What are some of the notable ways you are bringing diversity into the show this year?
Working with the disabled agency is really something we liked. We had a girl come, actually multiple girls come with disabilities last year, and they were a great hit in the show, and I think continuing that into this year, and also being open with any of the designers if they have any specifications of a transgender model, a non-binary model, something like that, we can really bring that into the show and bring their vision to life, but also kind of show that representation in our show.
Absolutely, yeah. So diversity is such a big topic of discussion within the industry right now. What do you think of the discussion and kind of what are your thoughts? Why do you think it's important to have this conversation?
I mean, I think it is really important because like the world has so many people that like not everyone's like that same model body type, and I think it got old. Like it's starting to get old. Like we need to have representation in the industry. Yeah. And I think bringing in people that relate to other people, look like other people is super important to get that customer attracted to that brand. Yeah. And also just to show that brand has more than just like the super skinny, like typical cut and dry model, but they have some personality, they have something else added to it that makes the company interesting and makes them aware of like the social issues going on now and makes them aware that their customer might not be that perfect model type, but that they're still willing to shop there. So like having them, that conversation of diversity brought up is really important to show that like companies are evolving and that not everything is the way it used to be and that we need to make changes to like be accustomed to like the greater good.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think also as a college and as, young professionals going into the industry, I think people look to us because we are the people that are going to go into the industry next. And I think with SNR, I think there's a lot of spotlight on us because this is something that we're putting on, as the designers, as the merchandisers, as the SNR class. And I think it's super important to be able to show that this is what we want coming into the industry. Yeah, no. And I'm pointing to the back because there's a bunch
I agree. Like I think of myself, think that to myself like multiple times, like all eyes are on us. Like especially because this is such a different course. I feel like it has a lot of media attention. A lot of people look to Marist for this course. So just making sure we put our best foot forward and showing that the industry is evolving and that we're the next generation of people that are coming into this industry. Like, it's important that we show not only the Marist community that, but the world who's viewing our content that like we're a new group of like innovators coming in with new ideas.
Yeah, and I think also last year with Reaction, that whole idea of the theme was about we want change. And a lot of professional, industry professionals come to the show and, you know, we always talk about what do we want to prove to them. And I think not only do we want the theme to be, you know, something we want to portray, but also what are the clothes and the people that we're putting down this runway?
Yeah.
And, you know, what are the, you know, videos we're putting out and what are the promotional aspects that we're putting out? And yeah, I just love this. I love this show because it's just a really great way to put out what we care about as 20-something-year-old fashion people that are going into the industry next.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, so of course, the segment that everyone loves, it is Can You Explain This, where I find a photo of you that you might not have been ready for, or something will come along SNR lines, and we need a little explanation on it. So if we could put up. So this is a new one. This is, usually I take photos from the past, but I really love this photo. This is you and your co-director, Lily.
Yes.
I'll let you explain the rest.
I don't know. I think someone was walking around with a camera at our theme release party this year, and I just didn't feel like...
No. Smiling? I don't want to do that.
And I didn't realize Lily was posing like right next to me either. If I had if I had like known she was behind me, maybe I would have done something different, but I literally thought it was like a solo shot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm taking the foulest photo right now. And then Lily was behind me, and I was like, oh, well, whatever.
This was one of our first events that we put on, so much of our effort was put into this.
Yeah.
Across all teams. We had never done this before, so it wasn't like we knew kind of what to expect. This was all new to us. And so I'm sure this was like 8 p.m. at night, like the event was, you know, winding down and yada, yada, yada. So you must have been exhausted at this point. So I don't blame you at all for this pose.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure everyone, like Lily, one thing about her, she could not take a bad photo. But I would have done the exact same thing.
No, I was like, I want to lay in my bed right now.
Yeah,
but
and
we were powering through.
We were powering through. So Laura, thank you so much for coming and sitting with me on the podcast and talking to me about your role and SNR in general. And for more of SNR, we are at Silver Needle Runway on Instagram and TikTok to see more of Laura and the class in general. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.